Geography and history is the key to understanding the Eurasian region, which is a combination of societies and states. The concept of Eurasia has been redefined in the post-Cold War period. Today, the Russian Federation is the leading country of the Eurasian continent and tone of the dominant states in the world power struggle, and the regions of Central Asia and Caucasus have emerged as a field of struggle for the major actor in the Eurasian geopolitics. For example, Russia has a unique position in world power relations and wants to preserve this position. Central Asian and Caucasian countries can attract the attention of great powers in terms of geography, history, and natural resources, which they have. Areas considered to be part of Eurasia have changed over time, as geographical boundaries have changed with significant alterations in human political and economic relations. The term Eurasia is used in three ways. The first, Eurasia is used both as a part of geographical and historical discourse. In a geographical term, Eurasia was a horizontal line from the Atlantic to the Pacific between the hotter peripheral regions in the south and the colder Arctic region in the north. In narrow sense, the Eurasian realm is a large landlocked region between Europe, the Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, and the Arctic taiga tundra zone. Historically, the term Eurasia can be defined not only as a geographical term but as territory where information, goods, and people were exchanged historically. The second use of the term Eurasia became common in Western academia. Eurasia began to refer to 15 states that became independent after the Soviet Union's collapse. Eurasia's concept refers to states that are economically, culturally, and politically close to each other and shared the same fate. The third use of Eurasia comprises Russia, Turkey, and 5 Central Asia countries. This usage is part of Russian and Turkish political discourses that have acquired an ideological meaning in what is known as Eurasianism. Classical Eurasianism is based on Russian political and intellectual movements in the early 20th century. Today, Turkey and Kazakhstan also have their own version of Eurasianism, which became a political discourse in Turkey and Kazakhstan. In simple terms, it means creating collaboration and cooperation between the Slavic and Turkic peoples. The Russian state's historical development can be characterized by altering regional expansion and contraction periods. However, until the second half of the 16th century, the Duchy of Moscow was limited by the powerful Turkic Tatar states in the south and east, controlled northern parts of the Black Sea and Caspian Seas. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania annexed Ukraine and Belarus. Therefore, the Duchy of Moscow turned its face to the north and east of Volga. The emergence of the Russian Tsarist Empire as an important actor on the world stage was due to two fields developments. First, the Russian Empire's territorial expansion began in the late 16th century when it controlled non-Slavic lands and peoples. Tatars lost their sovereignty in the middle of the 16th century. They were the first Turkish-speaking Muslims to be subjugated by the Russian Empire. Nevertheless, Tatars also found a place within the Russian aristocracy. Over time, especially during the reign of Catherine the Great, Tatars helped the Russian rule reach other Turkish people. Second, Tsar Peter I, the Russian Tsarist Empire, started the modernization process, first its military and then all-state structure to adapt the Western model. When Catherine II became Empress of Russia, she accelerated the modernization process and adoption of Western technologies and transforming Russian cities. From the second half of the 18th century, Russia began to occupy the Central Asian steppes, then its valleys and oases. The first victims of the Russians in Central Asia were the Kazakh Hordes. The Russians gradually seized the lands that make up the northern half of Kazakhstan today with wars and treaties that lasted for more than a century from 1730 to 1840. In the second half of the century, 1868-1884, Russia also managed to capture the entire southeast coast of the Caspian Sea from Iran and the southern part of Central Asia, 1864-1878. While the Kokand Khanate was abolished and converted into the Turkestan province of Russia, the Bokhara Emirates and Khiva Khanates remained so-called independent political structures under Russian protection. Russian control in the Central Asian region was strengthened towards the end of the 19th century with the Trans-Caspian Railway construction from Krasnovodsk, today's Turkmenbashi, on Caspian's east coast sea to Tashkent and south of Kazakhstan. One branch of the railway extended into the Fergana Valley. Gorbachev first wanted to structure the economy with perestroika, restructuring, policy. It aimed to create an environment where problems were discussed openly, and questions were asked with the glasnost, openness, policy. With its democratization, policy, it aimed to make the political system plural. With this new thinking policy, Gorbachev wanted to remove the Soviet Union from the Cold War's competitive environment. Lenin argued that the Communist Party should serve as an organization that further strengthens the workers' revolutionary consciousness and leads and directs their political activities. Lenin prepared why opposition movements cannot be allowed, why communist parties have a monopoly position. Thus, the understanding of the state led by the Communist Party replaced Marx's utopian dreams. The Cold War and the Soviet Union's competition for global supremacy contributed significantly to the economic and political difficulties that ultimately led to its demise. However, its disintegration was primarily the unintended consequence of a process that oddly enough was supposed to reform, reinvigorate, and strengthen it. The Soviet Union met its end because, as is often the case with centralized totalitarian states that try to liberalize, the reform initiated by Mikhail Gorbachev led to the fragmentation of the central political leadership. Despite all the problems and difficulties, the collapse of the Soviet Union surprised everyone. Many of the world's leading experts and politicians, including Soviet experts and politicians, why didn't we see it coming? There are several reasons why the signs of decay cannot be seen or known. First, the USSR was not a state whose data was open to the world. The troubles and economic deterioration were not reflected in the official figures because the Soviet Union did not want to show itself as powerless. Second, experts on the Soviet Union and intelligence services did not think that the Soviet system's problems could cause a cumulative collapse. Finally, it was predicted that the Soviet Union, with its armed power, would suppress demonstrations in the country and thus retain control. For example, in the past, the Soviet Union suppressed demonstrations in East Germany in 1953, Poland and Hungary in 1956, and Czechoslovakia in 1968. It is difficult to unequivocally answer the question of why the Soviet Union was dissolved. Unlike other empires collapsed, the Soviet Union collapsed unexpectedly. The reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union are varied and subject to interpretation. However, a short list can go a long way in explaining what ruined the USSR. First, the Soviet Red Army lost the Afghan war against the Mujahideen. Its failure weakened the Soviet people's faith in the army. Second, the strengthening of the opposition in Eastern European countries, which the Soviet Union controlled after the World War II, reached the level to overthrow their socialist governments. The socialist regimes collapsed one by one. These events also mobilized Soviet peoples. Third, Germany and Japan, which had lost the World War II, became economically more robust than the Soviet Union from the mid-1970s. The economic troubles experienced by the Soviet Union, which had the goal of catching up and overtaking the West economically, turned into a socio-economic crisis in the 1980s. Fourth, Ronald Reagan, who came to power in the United States with the 1980 election, restarted the arms race and defined the Soviet Union as an evil empire. However, the Soviet Union's economic difficulties also made it difficult to compete. Fifth, the Soviet Union economy, which implemented the socialist central economy, was not efficient. Sixth, the Soviet Union was a multinational state. Gorbachev's reform policies also paved the way for openly expressed nationalist demands in the Soviet Union. The more liberals and local nationalist activists, who prefer more autonomy that emerged as a result of Gorbachev's policies, came face to face with conservatives. On the August 19, 1991, the Conservatives attempted a coup d'état. This coup attempt led to the complete dissolution of the authority of the central government. Because of its location, some scholars view Central Asia as the peripheral region to the west of China, the east of Europe, north of the Middle East and India, and south of Russia. Moreover, Central Asia stands at the shortest junction between the four major economic and cultural regions in the Eurasian landmass, the Middle East, Europe, India, and China. For 3,000 years, its location has made Central Asia the only region with direct trade links with all other world regions. Thus, with its geography and history, Central Asia is a critical intersection point between Europe and Asia in the Eurasian realm. The surrounding areas contain large population centers and thus substantial political and economic forces. Central Asia was the transit route that provided access to all other primary production and exchange centers in Eurasia and directly contributed to trade and the focus of exchanging ideas between different religions. Therefore, since Central Asia is on the historical Silk Road route connecting East Asia to West Asia, Europe, and Africa, all powers have tried to control the region. The region's external borders were defined by Russia's Caucasian wars of conquest and subsequently revised by treaties with Turkey signed in the early Soviet period. Its internal borders delimiting the territories of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and the autonomous republics and regions incorporated in them are a product of Czarist administrative divisions adjusted to fit the nationalities' policy political requirements of the Soviet government of the 1920s and 1930s. The Soviet government gradually eliminated the nationalist intellectuals who reacted, such as Azerbaijani Turk intellectual Ahmet Cevid. Those intellectuals preserved the national identity and nationalist consciousness of the Caucasian peoples who developed as a reaction to Russian domination. The Soviet regime also deliberately curtailed the region's relations with neighboring countries of Turkey and Iran. Thus, the 7 decades of Soviet rules contradicted the region's fundamental geographical openness and formed an exception to its historical bridging role. Democratization was a slogan introduced by Soviet Communist Party General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev in January 1987 calling for the infusion of democratic elements into the Soviet Union's single-party government. Gorbachev's democratization meant the introduction of multi-candidate though not multi-party elections for local Communist Party, CPSU, officials and Soviets. In this way, he hoped to rejuvenate the party with progressive personnel who would carry out his institutional and policy reforms. The CPSU would retain sole custody of the ballot box. Stalin implemented the collectivization policy. The last president of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev withdrew the Soviet army from Afghanistan. Brezhnev doctrine is the position that the USSR could intervene in the domestic affairs of any Soviet bloc nation if a communist rule were threatened. South Caucasus is between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea and consists of the countries Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia. Kazakhstan has the biggest territory except for the Russian Federation. The Bolshevik Revolution happened in November 1917. Jadits refers to a movement that strived for changes in the Muslim Turk societies in the Russian Tsarist Empire by bringing knowledge and developing culture aimed at awakening the general population and struggling for reforms in their societies. United Russia Party of Power. In December 2001, Unity Party, Единство, joined the Fatherland All Russia, over, Отечество Всей Россия, to create United Russia, Единая Россия. When President Putin addressed the inaugural meeting that created United Russia, he welcomed the formation of the new party. However, he avoided associating himself directly with the party. Nevertheless, he runs the presidential election as the candidate of the party. Former Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev is the chair of the party. Oligarchs are a small number of people who made wealth by taking advantage of the early privatization, control of very profitable state-owned enterprises and assets, and influence government decisions through financial leverage and their inside connection into the presidential administration. During the privatization period, some people became incredibly wealthy. Rather than investing their fortune in the Russian economy, many oligarchs put their money into foreign accounts. Billions of dollars left the country. Powerful and well-known oligarchs are Vladimir Guzinski and Boris Berezovsky. They were politically very active in the second half of the 1990s. Nevertheless, even though they helped Putin to be selected as the new leader of the country by Boris Yeltsin, Putin set out to limit the powers of the oligarchs. Some of the oligarchs left the country and the other have accepted to collaborate with the Putin administration. Gazprom was created in 1989 by Minister of Gas Industry, Viktor Chernomyrdin, on the order of President Mikhail Gorbachev, to control gas exploration, development, production, transportation, distribution, and sales under one single umbrella. From its very beginning, Gazprom was the biggest gas company in the world and owned the world's largest reserves. The Russian state is the company's biggest shareholder. Lukoil was established as a state concern by a presidential decree signed in November 1991, only a month before the breakup of the Soviet Union. It consisted of the three state-run upstream units Lanchpas Neftegaz, Uraneftegaz, and Kogalimneftegaz. Hence, the acronym LUK, or Lajspaz Ure Kogalimneftegaz. It is the biggest oil company of Russia and has oil stations in different countries, including Turkey and the US. Rosneft was established back in 1995, during the turmoil surrounding the privatization of other state-held oil conglomerates. It is last remaining state-owned oil company led by a close associate of Putin, who also comes from a security background, Igor Sakhin.